So this is the encounters processing training, and I'm going to try to follow the claims user guide as much as I can. We're going to start right at the introduction page. But all of you probably know by now that I am not great at following user guides, so we'll just take it as it goes. So it talks about the background here. This user guide actually is meant for both claims and encounters because they're so similar. They share some of the same things. There's just some differences, which we'll go through as we review the training. The TCM claims process is always going to use the original claims process, but the MyChoice waiver is always going to use the encounters process for fiscal 14 and greater. So most of you, are, if you do TCM claims, are still using the claims process, which we're not going to really talk too much about today. But for the most part, encounter claims is the same process. The thing to know about encounters is that you do not get paid based on encounters. You get paid based on the capitation rates and your monthly payments there. The encounters, the thing that they are for is, first of all, to show the state what services that you paid for to, kind of like balance out what you've spent versus what you've gained. And it's also used for future capitation rate settings. I know I sent an email out to everybody letting them know that the state is planning on doing a review of the capitation rates for fiscal year 16 in the 1st of March. So everybody needs to get their fiscal year 14 encounters in order to make sure that all of those are being included in that rate setting. Okay. The encounter claims have to be submitted within 180 days of the service being provided. That's the MyChoice waiver policy guidelines. No, not guidelines, rules. So make sure that you're keeping up with that. I had sent in an email like an example of what that would be, but basically I would say if you do a 5-month window and not the 6 months, because 6 months would probably go over 180 days if you're depending on how many days are in every month in between. So I would, safely say if you are within 5 months, then you're okay. Right now, everybody should have submitted through September of 2014, but you can go ahead as well. As soon as you're done with the bills for that month, or you got most of them in, you can send the encounters for that month. You don't have to wait for that time lag. It's just that is the maximum that you could submit them in. So I know there's plenty of agencies that are through December already. I think I have a couple in January of 2015 as well. So people are moving right along, at least the processing January. I don't know if I have a badge yet, but so you can do however your agency wants to schedule doing the encounters. The old claims process had a pay cycle structure to say, that we used to get a remittance every week. Well, we still kind of do for some of these for the TCM claims and such. But that came then once a week. We got a remittance file from the state saying what was paid and what was rejected. Encounters is a little different than that because we don't get any payment from it. And because of that, it actually has a whole other format behind the scenes that we get from the state. And so we are getting that on a daily basis from the state. We're getting an encounter error file, it's called, and it's not one of the standard HIPAA formats. It's a state-initiated file format. But that file is sent to us daily. Once a day we get that, usually I think about 9 p.m. And it has, a lot of the time it will have everything that we submitted the day before, but sometimes there's a few days lag. We had an instance where we had some agencies creating some really big, they had some really big months that they were submitting a batch for. And I guess there was a problem at the state where there was us and another company that had submitted a bunch, and it blew up their side of the house that they had to, fix that and reprocess everything. And so that one took 6 days for us to finally get feedback on the encounters that were submitted. But other than that, it's usually a pretty quick turnaround. As such, we have pending claim errors that are in the system, and you won't see that too often because of the quick turnaround like we used to in the past. I mean, it used to be 90 days, 120 days before we had feedback, so you'd always see pending claims warnings for a while, but you won't see that too often now. The errors themselves are not going to be dealt with by you. CIM is reviewing them, and we're keeping an eye on some common errors that are happening, that be in touch with the state, because technically, besides some maybe eligibility things because they're not eligible yet, or ones that you need to change to tips, which we haven't got that far yet to even look at that, but because the state has some problems on their end with accepting them, and until they get that fixed, we really can't figure out where we're at. But we are dealing with the rejections from here because almost none of them have anything to do with anything you can fix. So we actually are automatically resubmitting eligibility errors in your next batch. So when we process an encounters file, it automatically says, oh, do I have rejections? I do. Let me mark those to go again when you guys create or process and create the next batch. So you could see that the same older months are going over and over and over again when you run your reports on what you created, and it may have those old dates in it, and that would be why, because they're getting resubmitted due to errors. But you don't really have to worry about that as we go on and CHAMPS is fixed. Then we'll know more about where what we need to do with that, and if we do have to do anything different than we are now. Okay. I'm now moving in the user guide to the billing tips section on page 3. There are a bunch of things listed here that will help you to avoid errors in our encounters processing. For instance, and errors in our processing and in the state. One thing, and some of these are not enforced, I don't think, in encounters, but it's still a policy rule. So if you got audited, you'd be in trouble for it, but I don't think they're going to reject encounters for some of these, such as the first example is there's only 14 units of S5161, which is the PERS monthly charge, because, per calendar year that is, because they don't want you to have, you're not supposed to bill more than once a month. The only reason we have an extra 2 per year is if you change vendors, so that you could have overlapping vendors in the same month. So that's one rule. That's one of them I don't think encounters are going to reject for, but I haven't seen that yet. I don't think either. We also need to make sure that the bills are reflecting the actual receipt or consumption of service, with the exception of monthly charges, which can be billed at any point, like PERS and emergency meals and such. So that talks about that there. Talks about the Medicaid-funded codes and what those are, and those are the codes that are picked up for the encounters process. And you'll see in the last bullet point, in encounters, the 102 and 105 bills are also included. So we are sending the tips and the gaps in the encounters. They are included, which in past history they were excluded and you had to do a separate process. They are now included in the encounters. The current list of My Choice service codes are in the annual attachment of HCPCS codes in the My Choice waiver contract. So if you ever have a question about service match errors, which we'll talk about later, then you would refer to that list to make sure that you're using the right code combinations. There's some examples down there of common things that we've seen is that there's S5150, which is unskilled respite. There is a standard remark available for it, which is 2008 specialized, and some other ones there too. But those are not eligible waiver service code combos. The waiver service code combo is just S5150. So you would have to get rid of those standard remarks on there in order for it to be a valid My Choice services. So that's there. And there's also some other issues that there's some NIFTY, non-waiver NIFTY funded services that are blue highlighted in the attachment in your contract. And those are different sometimes than the waiver ones. And if they are different, then if the person became waiver, then you need to make sure you're looking to see if the service code needs to switch as well, such as shower, chair, or bath bench. That is a T code, T2038, I believe, with a standard remark. But if you're billing it for waiver instead of the NIFTY service, then it needs to be billed as the E0245 code, the DME code in the waiver. So you have to be on the lookout for that kind of thing as well. There's also the yellow highlighted codes of the gap filling services, so those should only be billed to Fund Source 102. And there's also certain service codes have a maximum of 1 unit per day or month. So there's a list in the user guide there that shows what the per day codes are and the per month codes are. And so you should only be billing 1 unit for each of those per day or per month, whichever type the code is. So The only exception would be like the S5161 because of the 14 units per calendar year when it overlaps vendor. And when we say 1 unit per day or month, that means across vendors. So if they say it's only 1 unit per day, such as for H2016, that, which is your, I think, CLS per day, you guys can only bill one vendor for 1 unit each day. So you can't have 2 vendors providing H2016. The state said if you need that, then you should not be billing a per day code. You should be billing the per 15-minute code. So a lot of you had that issue when we first started up with encounters, and I think it's resolved now. But we had, not encounters, it was in claims when CLS first came out, I believe. So most of you addressed that now, but that is something to watch for, because if it's a per day or per month service, they assume that that vendor and service took the entire day or took the entire month, and so no one else should be providing service that same day or month. Okay. And then we're going on page 4. The state often refers to an SE modifier in your contract, and that modifier is assumed in our system with the use of fund sources 102, 105, 995, and 996. Okay. 102 is the gaps, 105 is the tips, and the 995 and 996 are the CMP and the non-waiver NIFTY funded services. So if any of those codes are billed, our system interprets that when we do reports for you or when we're sending the encounters, we put the SE for you in there. We don't think it's necessary to track it separately. It's just more confusing. Okay. The bottom of page 4, it talks about the gaps and tips and waiver-funded NIFTY, non-waiver funded NIFTY services reporting. I'm not going to go through that today. You do not need to do gaps and tips anymore for fiscal year 14 and greater, but you still do need to do the non-waiver funded NIFTY service reporting. On a side note to that, I recently updated the spreadsheet for and I think the script for the non-waiver NIFTY funded service. So if you have any to report for fiscal 15, you want to go out to the reports portal and get the latest script because the state changed the format. So we got a hold of that, and I just put it out there, I think, this week or end of last week. So you'll want to get that latest spreadsheet available on the reports portal. It's under the services category in the clear access tab. But the instructions are there for you to use to go through that process to create the spreadsheet for the state. Okay. Nursing home entry day is the next thing it's talking about. When a person goes in the nursing home, the day they go into the nursing home is a nursing home day. Okay, that means that if you provided services in the morning and they provided, or then the person left to the nursing home after that, then you cannot bill the day as a normal waiver service. You would have to put in the service as a TIPS Fund 105 for that day because they are not going to be eligible for the waiver on that day. So any bills that were posted to Fund 105 or to Fund 100 or one of those other ones for that day would need to be changed to 105 so that they could go correctly to the state and get, approved or accepted. I guess it's really not approved anymore, it's accepted. There is a script available in the Clear Access Services category that identifies people that had a Medicaid funded bill on the day that the person was indicated in the care setting that they were in the nursing home. So you can run that to find issues, and so that's something you may want to run periodically, maybe before you do your data sets every month, or your badges, kind of moved away from data set terminology. So you could run that and identify if you have any of those and get those fixed so that you don't run into any eligibility errors in the future. And so it talks about how you would go about that and how you would create a new care plan line in MySys for it. I'm not going to go through any of that today, but the information is in there for you. Now the opposite is true for when they come out of the nursing home. On the day they come home, that is a waiver day. So the day they come home from the nursing home and if you provide services, that should be paid or funded by the regular waiver, not the 105 TIPS fund. So and when they go in, it's a nursing home day. When they come out, it's a waiver day. Okay. Is there any questions on that? Okay. All right, then there's the NIFTY billing. There's 3 different service codes that the state has given you guys to use to provide services when they're in the nursing home. So you can do the screen, the assessment. You may have some transition services you need to do before they can move home, maybe when they're moved home too. So those services you may not know at the time that they are in the nursing home if they're going to be eligible for waiver or not. And you can do two different things. You could assume that they're going to be waiver and you could post them to the waiver fund source, or you could post them to the 996 fund source, the non-waiver NIFTY funded billing, and then change the fund source if they become waiver. And actually most people have their services for these rendered prior to the first day of waiver. So when somebody comes on the nursing home and they come on the waiver program, if you had billed those to 996 or haven't even posted them yet, then you would need to post all those bills in aggregate for each of those services on the first day of waiver, up to, for whatever was done before, because you will not be able to post them on the day that they were actually rendered in that case because they were in the nursing home. But the state wants to get the matching federal dollars for it, so they want you to bill it on the first day of the waiver program, so they get that. If they do not transition to waiver, something went wrong, they were not financially eligible or medically eligible, or something happened that they didn't transition or didn't transition to waiver, then those bills still need to be to the 996 fund source. And then that is what gets reported on the non-waiver NIFTY spreadsheet that we just talked about right before this. So if they become waiver, you have to make sure the dates are on the first day of waiver, if they were before the first day of waiver. If they're after the first day of waiver, then you can bill them just as is. So if you had some transition services that need to be done once they got home, those can be billed on the day that they were rendered. But if they were before the first day of the waiver, then everything needs to be moved and aggregated to that first day of waiver. Okay? Now the important part also about this is posting those bills is very important to you, because those are the bills that trigger a NIFTY kicker payment. Okay? So if those bills are not posted to a person that transitioned, then you are not going to get your extra kicker payment from the state in your capitation. Okay? Which it was $1,700 something, I think, in fiscal 14, and now it's $1,400 and something this year. So that extra money is only triggered when these bills are posted, and that they are posted to a waiver transition person. So you need to make sure that those are posted under the waiver fund source system. If you get any encounters, the encounters are sent, and that will trigger the state to give you a kicker payment for it. Okay? All right, then there is a clear access script it talks about on page 7 called NIFTY Billed When Waiver. So that script will tell you if you've posted people to the 996 fund source when they became a waiver client, so that you can clean those up. Because those are the ones that you're going to want to change, because if you don't change them, then you're not going to get your kicker payment. Okay? So that's available to you to run as needed too. So, they both, this and that NIFTY Nursing Home Day Bill 105 script might be something you want to do once a month prior to doing the claims or the encounter processing. You may want to say, oh, I'm going to do that every other month. It doesn't matter as long as you get that fixed into the state. Okay? It talks on page 8, it has a chart there about transition reporting and what fund sources and such can be billed based on when they, before the transition or when they transition to what program, or an unsuccessful transition. I'm not going to go through every situation on there, but that is available to you for reference. If you have questions with it, feel free to give us a call and we can work through whatever issue you're having with it. Okay? Are there any questions so far? Okay. All right. So now we're going to probably deviate from the user guide because we're going to actually get into encounter processing. So I'm on page 11. It talks first about agent information in encounters. I don't have an example to show you this, but if there was any information missing in your agent information, which is available under Tools, Agent Specific Data, Agent Information, which is your name, your address, your federal ID, your NPI, etc., then you're going to get an error coming into the encounters process, and it'll tell you what's missing. So you get an error as soon as you got here. None of you have this issue because it's been set up for years, so you're probably never, ever, never going to see it, but If something changes, that somebody touches your agent record and thinks that they know what they're doing and obviously didn't because now you're getting an error, then that would be why. Okay? And only users with the add change privilege checked for agent-specific data in Compass Manage users will be able to change that agent information. So if you need to change something because maybe you have an address change or a phone number change or something, then that would be the person that has those rights would be able to do that. Okay. The bottom of page 11 talks about the overview of the processing summary steps. I'm not going to go through that right now, but that is the quick and dirty, let me remember all the steps I need to do when I'm going to run a claims or encounter process. Okay, so you can refer to that in the future, but I'm not going to go through that right now. Okay, so now we're in the software. When you go to claims and then you choose encounter processing, this is the page you're going to get. At the top, you can tell it's encounter claims processing because the word encounter is there. If you went into claims processing, you'll see claims processing. So that's the difference between the two pages that you can tell right away. I know that we're having some issues out there that people are picking the wrong one and starting a batch, and it's fine because it's not going to hurt anything, but they may have thought that they did an encounter process when really they went in and did a claim process, and there was really nothing that happened in the claims process, or it was and it was TCM, but or they start a claims process and then come back to encounters and are like, wait, what? There's nothing here. Well, it's because you started it in claims, not encounters, and you have to go to claims and cancel that and start it in encounters. So make sure you're paying attention to which one you're going into for your own sanity. So this at the top, this red part is a status, so it tells you exactly what needs to happen. So right now, if you want to start the process, you need to select the month and year, and then select users to be notified when a batch can be created from the claims email recipients list. Okay, so that's the first part. So you would select a month and year, and in my example here, I got to look at what I'm doing, where I'm at. December 2013 is what I want. Okay, so when you choose a month and year, the system page changes, and it changes in that now we see an unverified bills report pop up, because what that does is it gives you the ability to run the unverified bills through the selected month and year. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Then down here, the claims email recipients, those are users that have claims processing view privileges in Compass Manage users. So if they have claims processing view privileges, then their name and email is going to show up here. Now, this email is used for only one purpose in the system, and that purpose is that through the process we have to go send the clients and dates that we're going to be sending encounters for to the state, and then we're going to obtain their insurance information from the state and then incorporate that into our claim submission or encounter submission in this case. And so that takes a day or maybe half a day, it depends. If you submit it, if you do a process like before 9 a.m. in the morning, most likely at about 1:30-ish, I think, you'll have it processed back. If you do it any later, though, yeah, I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to get that insurance file back from the state, which we're sending a 270 eligibility request is what the file is called, and we're getting back a 271 eligibility response. So the 270 is sent as part of our claims processing when we start the process, and then when it returns, the 271 comes back, and when it returns, this email's purpose is to let you know when that comes back. So then you know that you can go back into encounters processing and continue because now we have the insurance information. Okay? So that process is happening, and if you need to have that email to alert you about that, then you would want to click that add email. All right? So only the people that need that notification need to have the add email. I guess another purpose you could use that for is maybe you have a supervisor or something that you just want to let them know that you're on top of this. So if they have claims processing rights, you could also add their email so that they'll get an email when that 271 is returned, and then they'll know that you're on top of it because they saw that that came through. Okay? So that's another option. It doesn't say anything important in the email itself. It just says the 271 was processed, and you can go in and reprocess claims and continue with your encounters. So it's nothing significant, but that's just another way you could do it. If you make a mistake and add it and you don't want it, then you can click delete. Okay, so that just takes it out of the queue. Okay, so when you go in here, you want to pick the month and year, then you want to add whoever needs to get the 271 eligibility insurance email to let you know to continue running the encounters process. And then the first thing you want to do is step 1 is to click the unverified bills report here. Okay, the unverified bills report is going to come up, and it's going to show you, first of all, your agency name and then what month you ran this through. It's going to tell you the name of the person, their social security number, their intake date, the care plan line number, the agent vendor ID, the service code, the fund source, the invoice numbers, and the date range of the services that are unverified and how much that totals. So right now I know that I have a couple issues with 2 different services for Superman that I need to go into MySys, into the variance verification module, and get these verified so that they'll be included in my claims process. If I do not verify them, they are ignored. They are not going to be included in my encounters process, therefore they're never going to go to the state to be processed and accepted there. So this unverified bills report should be clean every month before you run the process. Okay? And if it's not, maybe there's some situations that you need to get a hold of us for because you're not sure why, but most things don't verify because there's no template or scheduled exception for the date range that you're trying to verify the bills for. That is the most common issue. So there has to be a scheduled exception or template in the date range that you're putting in the variance verification module in order for it to get verified. I'm not going to go through the verification. I'm just going to skip this part, but that would be what you do with this. So hopefully what you do is you go into MySys, you get that verified, then you come back here and click the unverified bills report again. It should come up clean and you know you're good. Okay, so that's the first step. Then the next step is that you want to click the process button. And clicking that is going to change our process status. It says claims in process. It's checking data and submitting the 270 file. Remember, the 270 file is the insurance request file that we're sending to the state. That happens automatically behind the scenes. It goes and finds the dates of service that we want to submit and sends it to the state. Now, we do not send dates of service that are over a year old for eligibility check. Okay? We don't because the state won't even process it. They'll reject it. So we cannot send to the state any inquiries about insurance for dates of service that are over a year old. So that being said, I picked December 2013 in my example here, and I did that for a very good reason, because December 2013 is over a year old. What that means is that since it's over a year old, it's not even going to send the 270 file. It goes through the motions of it, but then it's going to find out that, hey, there's nothing to send, so we're going to skip that part. So it's processing, it's doing that. And in the first versions of encounters and claims processing, we had this all grayed out, and it was updating the page, etc. And people were confused because they thought that they had to stay here in our claims process world until it was done. You do not have to do that. I can go right now and go into case files, or I can be doing some reports on the waiting list or capitation. I can do whatever I want right now. I can log out of Compass. It does not matter. The system is processing this on the server, not on your computer. Okay? So you can get in and out of this at any point you want to. It is not automatically refreshing the page, so if you want to know if it's done or not, you can click the refresh button here or at the top of your browser, and it will let you know if it's done or not. So when I click refresh, I knew it was going to be done. It's kind of lying to me right now because it's saying the 271 file is processed. It's really not, because it never got sent because it's over a year old, but it's ready to reprocess claims. Okay? So what just happened here with that process, what it did is it went out to all my bills from December 2013 dates of service and before, back up to when we started encounters in October 2013. So right now it'd be doing October 2013 to December 2013 dates of service, and it looks at bills that are verified and that they have not been sent to the state yet. Okay? Or they've been sent and we're marking them to resend, so therefore they're not sent again. So it's pulling those bills for the fund sources of the 100, 101, 102, 105, 108, 109, and 110 that are verified, that are not been sent, and it's processing them. It's going out and it's getting all of the related information on the person, that we have to send, such as the primary diagnosis, the Medicaid ID, their address. We send that 270 file if we can and get back a 271. If in this case, like now, that this is over a year old, if I had processed these same people before they were over a year old, we actually grab the latest eligibility information we have on that person, regardless if we got it in this batch process. Okay, so if I had done this before, it's still going to get whatever insurance we got before it was over a year old. Okay, so it's going to try to find some insurance. If it doesn't have any, oh well, it's not going with insurance. But if it finds something from a previous run, then it's going to grab that and send that with it. So we try to get the most recent insurance. Well, we do get the most recent insurance if it's available for the date ranges of those bills that you posted. Okay. So we've grabbed all these bills. We're looking at them. That's what the process is doing. It's taking all these bills and it's dumping them into a process table in the background, and it's analyzing if there's anything wrong with them. Okay. When you do this, when it's finished, and we kind of skipped a status here, the status would say 270 files sent, waiting for 271. Okay, typically that's a status right now. And at that point, you're going to have the participant and bill error reports available to you. You don't have to wait for the 271 file to come back before these reports can be looked at. Okay, so actually you want to look at it before you process the 271 file, and I'll explain that in a second. But so when you first click process and it gets done processing, run these reports. Do not wait for the 271 to come back for that. Okay? And what these reports are is these are errors that are holding back the claims from being sent to CHAMPS. Okay? And that's because when we wrote the software, we wanted to make sure that we didn't send obvious problems to the state and then have to deal with the cleanup after the rejection. So therefore, we make you clean it up before it's even sent. Therefore, we have a higher acceptance rate from the state because we're sending clean encounters. Okay? So if I click on the participant error report, I am going to get all the information related to that participant's record that I have a problem with. So this first line, it shows me their social security number. It's Daffy Duck. One problem I can tell right away looking at the date of birth column is that's missing. The intake date of the episode that this data is coming from is listed here. If there's a specific assess date, that's the issue, it will list the date here. We're actually going to be changing this when we get to ICD-10 that we'll talk about, but basically in ICD-10's world, we're going to be using the most recent assessment for whatever the data service area is. So if it was the most ICD-9 ends on 9/30/2015, and ICD-10 is going to start 10/1/2015. So if the data service is 9/30 or less, we're going to grab the most recent assess date prior to the end of September of 2015. If it's a 10/1/2015 data service and greater, we're going to grab the next assessment every time because we don't want you to have any deal with updating old assessments. We're just going to grab the most recent to use for the claims purposes. So that's going to change, but right now these ones don't have an assessment, which means that they're the next assessment record that it's looking at. Okay, the next assessment. Then the errors columns are listed. So these two columns are errors, and we've got, for Daffy Duck, we have an address error. Okay, if you look in your user guide on page, let's see here. I'm trying to find it. Errors. Why am I blind? I usually have it highlighted. I did not highlight it. But the error is saying that there's an address issue. Now the address has to have it cannot have a P.O. box. It cannot have a symbol in it. And this is in the line 1 of the address record. So when you have an error in the address, that's what the cause is. And right now I'm just not finding this in the user guide. I don't know if I'm missing it or what, but the error in the address field, that's what that's about. So if I pull up, I'm going to go right now, I'm going to just go look up Daffy Duck. So I'm going to pull up Daffy's case file, and when I'm going to go look at the address record. All right, and this is another issue with it, because you can't have symbols, and you have to have numbers in the line 1. So in this instance, the problem is that somebody's put senior living apartments, this would be me putting it there, but senior living apartments in line 1, but the actual physical address in line 2. That's a problem. What has to happen is that the physical address has got to be in line 1, because that is the one going to the state. The state requires a physical address to be sent to them. So if this had got through and we didn't stop you, then the state was not going to reject it, because that's not a valid address. Okay? So I'm going to flip these around, and I just kind of cut and paste around here so that I have them in the right spot. Okay? You also want to look at the address and make sure that you have a city, state, zip. Okay? Those are also required fields. If those were missing, I would have an asterisk in the missing data address. So there's two types of address errors. There's address, meaning that you need an actual physical address, meaning no P.O. box information, no alt text field. It's got to have a number and letters in there with no symbols either. So that would be an error. Missing means I'm missing line 1 or city or state or zip. Okay, those are listed there. So line 1 is the address, city and state and zip are the others. So if those are missing, then you would need to come into the case file and fill that out. Okay, so I fixed that problem there. The next problem is the primary diagnosis is missing. Okay, so this is where you would look at the assess date column to figure out where that's at. A lot of the times you're going to see an assess date here, and it's very important that if you get an older assess date here, that you also, when you're fixing it, look at more recent assessments and make sure that they're also not missing the primary diagnosis, because 9 times out of 10, it's also missing in the more recent ones. Okay? And what all that means is that when you do the next month, or the month after that, you're going to get another primary diagnosis here for that same person. It's just going to be a newer assessment date. So it's better to just clean them all up when you go in, instead of looking at only the one that it's specified in the error report. So if I go to Daffy Duck, I'm going to go to his assessment record, and there's only a next assessment, which hopefully is not the case for you guys. And then the primary diagnosis is in the other or primary diseases section. And you can see right here, there is nothing added here. If there was, they'd have a plus sign just like these others. So we need to add one. So I'm just going to pretend like I know what it is and put it in. And in here, you can type in the code like I just did, select one. It fills everything in for you. You click add, and then you have to mark it as primary. Okay, that's the important piece. You may have a boatload of diseases in here, but if none of them are marked as primary, then you're going to have this asterisk in the primary diagnosis column. Okay. The next one missing here is Medicaid ID. Okay, so there are a couple things you could do with this. Most likely, they're not eligible for Medicaid. But I'm going to actually show you something right now. If you want to look up, I think that's what it is. If you want to look up to see if they have a Medicaid ID, even if they're not waiver yet, they may have a Medicaid ID. So you would go to the single sign-on, and somebody at your agency will have an access to this. And I'm not going to show you any data in here, but I just want to show you what it looks like. You got to get through all of this lovely stuff. But what you would do, I'm just going in and just somebody, doesn't matter. In here, there's a member eligibility inquiry, okay? And up at the top, it tells you various combinations that the state will let you search for their information, their eligibility information. And this is where I oftentimes will find Medicaid IDs that are missing from the system. And what I would put in is I would put in their Social Security number. It can't have the dashes, so it has to just be a straight up digits only. And then I put their last name and first name, And then down here is the eligibility inquiry start and end date. You can change that. It defaults to today. But if you know like they died recently, then you want to back that up. And that can only be backed up for up to a year, just like how we submit things. But you could put that information, click submit, and up would pop the Medicaid ID possibly. Or it'll say no records found. Either way, you would know that you've done everything you can to make sure that you found out if there's a Medicaid ID or not. Sometimes, though, the Social Security number that you have in your system is wrong. Or CHAMPS has the wrong one. You know, it goes both ways. So if I find no records found the first time, I'll take out that Social Security number and then put in a date of birth, because I can't search just by first name and last name. They won't let you. It has to be first name, last name, and date of birth, or first name, last name, and SSN, or you could do SSN and date of birth. But my common things is I put in either the SSN, last name, first name, or the last name, first name, and date of birth. I don't really search on anything else when I'm in here. So if you do it that way, then you could find out that, oh, wait, we must have a mismatched Social Security number, and then you have to figure out who's right and get it fixed. So I usually do those two searches, and after that I give up and decide that they don't have a Medicaid ID assigned to them yet, and there's nothing I can do about it. Okay? So that's just a tip there that you can see that. I'm actually going to stay logged in for a second because I may show you some stuff later. So that's a way to figure out the Medicaid ID. And so if you find it, you can go in here, go into the participant record, and fill it in. Okay? So you know I'm still actually looking at this report. I'm not in claims anymore. It doesn't matter. I have this up as a tab. I can keep referring back to it. I don't usually print anything because I hate printing stuff. So, but you may want to for your own records. Maybe you want to keep track of all the things you've been fixing. That's fine. Or maybe you need to take it somewhere else to another person to have them tell you what the primary diagnosis is. Sure. But you don't have to print it out. You can just keep it up here and work from that. So Medicaid ID, if I figured it out, I can put it in. Otherwise, I know that Daffy is really going to go nowhere. Okay? Because Medicaid ID is a required field, as is all of these information here. So if I don't have a Medicaid ID, Daffy is not going to get sent to CHAMPS in the encounter. He's not going to be in my batch at all. He's going to just wait until there's a Medicaid ID, and eventually when one gets put in, then he'll go in my next batch that I create. But until then, he just sits on our side of the fence until we have that information. Okay? So the next thing over is date of birth and gender. So I would need to fill those things in. So date of birth, just making something up here. Well, not 2000, that would be bad because then he would be too young for the waiver program. And then Daffy's male. So that would take care of those issues there. So Daffy is as fixed as I can make them because I don't have a Medicaid number on them. The next one down is He-Man. So I got a dummy Social Security number you're seeing here. Okay, he's got the date of birth, and there's an error on SSN. Well, the error on the SSN is the fact that it's a dummy SSN. We are not allowed to send dummy SSNs for waiver participants to the state. So this has got to get corrected. And so you would need to find what the real one is, and then you would go into Compass, and you would go to Tools, Compass Assistant, and then the Change SSN is the default page in here. You would type in the old with the dashes, type in the new with the dashes, click Change, and it would happen. You would know that it actually worked because you would need to go to this history piece, and here it's the history of any Social Security number changes that happened. So I already see here that I had done this SSN change for Daffy Duck before. So I had changed this social number to this 999, and new old value, new value, who did the change. If you needed to see the history of the audit logs information on the old ID, then that's available there. And then it gives you which date this happened, and then the history of the new record is available too. So all that information is available here. You need to make sure it says complete. If it says incomplete, that means it didn't do it. I haven't seen this happen in a very long time, so I've never worried about it. But if you find out that you still have that problem, then there may be an issue there that we need to look at here at CIM, because they should all go through. So that is what you do to fix that issue. So He-Man, if I went through and fixed him, which I can do. Let me just put it in there. I got to look at this though. So it's 5139. So oops, 7500151. I can't type 39, and then I'm just going to make up some. Oops, not too long though. Okay. So then you click Change. It's going to say confirm. You want to change He-Man to this? Yes. And then it tells you it's been submitted for processing. Look at the history like I was just showing you. We come to the history, He-Man is complete. Okay, So I fixed that SSN error. He's also got a primary diagnosis error. So now I need to go to his case file and pull his up and fix that as well. I should have clicked on assessment so I went straight there instead of into the intake, but you know, hindsight. So again, there's no plus sign, which means nothing's been added. So I'm again adding the only code I can remember off the top of my head. And then do that, mark it as primary, then he's done. So then you keep working, and then we've got strawberry shortcake. Now strawberry shortcake, she's got a lot less problems, a lot less key problems. The difference between strawberry shortcake and these other two is that she has no SSN and no Medicaid ID errors. Okay, SSN and Medicaid ID errors are some fatal errors to the encounter process and claims process too. Those are key identifiers, and because they are key identifiers, they are also used when we send the state the 270 eligibility request. Okay. Because they were not here when we initially clicked process, which is the part that sends the eligibility request to the state, that means that these people are not going to have any insurance returned. Okay? Because of that, we are going to prevent you from these people going in the batch, regardless if you fix the SSN or Medicaid ID after the fact. Okay? So what happens is when that 271 comes back, they won't be there, of course, because we couldn't send them because we had no identifiers to send to the state about them, or we had one of not many. We need both SSN and Medicaid ID. Okay? So because they didn't get there, when we reprocess this, they are going to drop off the error reports. It doesn't matter if they still have errors, like if I hadn't fixed everything, they're still going to drop off. Like I didn't fix the Medicaid ID, when I reprocess, Daffy Duck is going to disappear because he can no longer be included in this batch because I have no eligibility information for him. Okay? So, or, you know, and it's not the fact, even that I'm doing the over-year-old and I couldn't even get eligibility, it doesn't matter because we built it so that those two will fail. They will drop out regardless of what date range you're using. Okay? So those people will not be included. If you want them to be included in this batch, what you'd have to do is you'd have to go into the claims encounter processing and you would need to cancel. Okay? Canceling this will then allow them to come into a brand new process with which we can send the 270 file again, and then we'll have the information. But you would do that after you've made the corrections to whatever you needed changed. Okay? So you can choose that. So you could do that if you want them in right away. Otherwise, you can keep going and just know that I'm going to need to create another batch once this information is fixed in the system. Okay? So otherwise, those people are not getting sent to the state with the Social Security number and Medicaid ID missing. But Strawberry Shortcake here, she doesn't have that issue. So if I clean her up, she's going to go in this batch. So I would go into Strawberry Shortcake's case file and fill out all this stuff. I'm going to click on assessment this time because she's missing primary diagnosis just like the other three. And then I click on add because I don't have one there. Some of these you would have one there already. You just need to choose which one is primary. So you don't necessarily have to add a code. There may be a code there already. So that was one issue. Whoops, not there. Then we've got date of birth, gender, and address problems. Okay, so let's deal with date of birth and gender, which is at the top level. So okay, female. All right, so date of birth and gender are done. Now the next one is address. So I need to go into the address record. It's actually not this address, is it? No, it is going to be this one because it's got nothing. So because I'm sending December 2013 dates of service, it's getting the address that applies to the dates of service. So it's not the most recent one, it's this 2011 one because this one's effective up until 6/29/2014. So this is the one I need to have some information in. Okay, so then I'm just going to fill this out. And then there we go. Okay, so now she's got a lovely address. And we've done all the rest. Okay, So right now, that report, I've taken care of as much as I can take care of. We're done with that. So then we'll go back to the encounters processing, and we've got another report to deal with. We've got the bill error report to deal with. The bill errors are related to the actual bills that are in the system versus the participant related was more related to their case file information that's not there. This is related to the bills. So this is vendor information, okay, because the vendors are providing the services. It has to do with the bills themselves. It has to do with prior encounter submissions, okay. There's a lot of different things on here. At the bottom is a key for all the different types of errors. So you don't have to remember what VF, VA, VT stand for, but it shows the person, the care plan, the agent vendor ID, the service, etc. The min and max date of service. Back in the old days, we had every single date separately, and so these reports were, hundreds of pages long. So we got smarter and, condensed it and summed it up instead for each type of error. So each type of error will show different things, okay? You could have the same care plan line number with two different errors in it that are separate lines because they apply to different time periods, okay? But if we look at DAFI here, for the H2015, there's a VA error. And if we look at the bottom, vendor address. So what the issue is that this vendor, 12345, has an address missing data issue, okay? So what that means is I would need to go into MISIS, which I need to go pull that up, and I need to go look at what the issue is there. So I would go log into MISIS and go to maintenance vendor, and I would pull up 12345, which is ABC home vendor. And I can see right now that the issue is that line 1 of the address is a P.O. box. Just like for the clients, this isn't allowed for the vendors either. So I need to change these around so that the P.O. box is in a different spot. Okay. The other thing that's required for a vendor is we need to have their zip +4. So you'd need to find that out, which you could do that via like a the USPS has a lookup for addresses. I think even maybe like Google or something would even give it to you, but I'm just going to fill that in. So you need that as well as part of the vendor address. So then I click Save, and then that error has been taken care of. Okay, so I'm going back into the encounter error report. So that was all for that first line. The second issue is that we have a VF error. VF stands for Vendor Federal ID SSN. So for 45678, we've got a missing issue on the Vendor Federal ID or SSN. Now the reason why it says or SSN is because there is providers that are not a business, they're a person, and so businesses, it would be a missing federal ID. If it's not, if it's a person, then it's a missing social security number. We need that for the claims process. So XYZ monitoring is the problem. So I need a federal ID. So you would need to obtain what their federal ID is, and it's probably some 38 number. It could be something else, but Michigan's most common for 38, and fill that in. Okay, we've got that. So vendor 45678 set. Now the next person's He-Man. Well, this is another VA error. Well, if you look, it's the same vendor as Daffy Duck, which means I already fixed that. So we can skip that one. So we've got Superman over here. Superman, the first one he's got is a PC warning. The PC warning has to do with pending claim, is what that stands for. What that means is that I have another encounters batch that was sent to the state, and I have not heard back from the state yet on that batch. So until I do, I don't know what to do with this encounter, if it's going to be a new claim or a replacement claim or a void claim is another option. So therefore, I'm going to hold this. Okay? So that's what that PC warning is. It's nothing you need to worry about. It just means that it's held. Now I will tell you, we just recently, this last week, have had an issue with PC warnings because we fixed a bug behind the scenes that we found something wasn't logging like we thought it was supposed to, which is needed for what I need to do on the error reporting issues. And so we fixed that, but it accidentally removed the fact that we'd heard back on all of these prior batches. So we fixed that, and I mean, it's fixed for future stuff, but we erased it out of the old stuff. But we already had the data in other methods, so we just updated all that. So now you should not see that for all your claims anymore. And it'll be just the ones that are appropriate. So that's been fixed. But so any PC warnings you see from here on out just means that you've probably created a batch really close to another batch date that you did. Like you did this in the next 2 days, you started another batch. And if that would happen, then we may not have gotten the encounter error file back yet, which would cause a PC warning. Okay. This line has a PU error. Now PU, if you look below, is a partial unit. And if you look, we have 5.5. That is bad. Okay. Now, even though this says 5.5, this may also say 6. Just because the units here is not a partial unit does not mean that there's not an issue, because this is summing up all the bills in this period. So if I had 2 bills that were 2.5 and another one that was 1, that would total up 6, and there's still an issue because there's individual bills that are 2.5 units. Okay? So the units can be deceiving here because it's not necessarily showing you what bill is the partial unit. So you would need to go into the system and fix that in bill edit, okay? Because you are not allowed to have partial units for waiver. So that would need to be corrected in bill edit. I'm not going to go through that part, but so that needs to be done. And then your next error is a VA error, and this is on vendor 01234. That's a whole nother vendor. So if I go pull up vendor 01234, which is Clean R Us, and look at the address, this is because I'm missing the zip +4. Okay, because you can see the address here is fine. So if I put in whatever the zip +4 is, save that, then that one will go away when I do this report again. The next one down the line, that's 45678 with the VF error. We've already taken care of that in the second row up here, so we skip that. The next one down here is a negative unit amount, and it's got an LZ error, and that means less than 0. But you'll also see that there's a PC warning. You would ignore less than 0 errors when you see a PC warning, because what that means is that there's a pending claim that you had sent before, probably for the $5, the positive amount, okay? And now this one's coming through saying that you took that out, but we can't send that until we get back the other one. And when we get back the other one and process this, it should process the 2 together, and it won't be less than 0 anymore. It'll be 0, okay? And then it won't be on your error report because everything's hunky-dory. So you would, LZs with PCs you should ignore. If you see LZs and not a PC warning, then you need to contact CIM, because that means that there's an issue. And it could be that bills were deleted, like maybe some original bills that you created were deleted when they were still unverified, but there's still some credits that were there from the original verified bill edit, and then it totals a negative, and that would be bad. So we would need to look into that here, just to make sure that there's nothing bad with the bills themselves. So less than 0 without a PC warning is an issue that you should contact CIM about. But if it's got a PC warning, you just ignore it. It'll work itself out in the future when that other prior batch is approved. Okay. This next one down, we've got a couple warnings on this one. We've got both a VA and a VN. Now you notice this is vendor 12345. 12345 had a VA up here, but they did not have a VN here. And I'm scratching my head going, why not? Well, I can tell you why. VN stands for vendor NPI. Okay? Vendor NPI is required when you use a T1000, T1001, 2, 3, or whatever those codes are. Anything with a nursing service, okay, the vendor has to have an NPI. What that means is that we know that with nursing services that is a home care service, and therefore or healthcare service, I should say. So therefore, that vendor should be registered with an NPI, because it's illegal for them not to have an NPI. All right, and we have to submit that to the state. So if you would need to contact that vendor, get their NPI, and put that into the system. Okay. So that would need to be done. If you cannot find an NPI, then they are going to be on this report in forever, okay? Unless you take out the bills and take their money back, because they should not have been providing that service to begin with. Up to you. But they need an NPI. Or maybe they'll go register for it and give you their NPI, and you'll be fine in the future. That can work too. Doesn't matter as long as you have a code, okay? but don't make it up. That'd be bad, because the state does validate those NPI numbers. We've had a few rejections in the past where people have made typos in the NPI, and so we know that the state is checking that in encounters, that we need to make sure we're sending valid NPIs to go through a check routine that CIM doesn't have programmed, so to validate it. So we're on to the next person, Strawberry Shortcake. And she's got VA and EU errors. Well, VA, again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like the first one we did. Can ignore that. We fixed that. EU is excessive units, okay? And what the issue is, this is an H2016 service, okay? And it's November to December 30th is what it's looking at. So I'm going to show you in Bill Edit what is going on with her. So if I pull up Strawberry Shortcake, and it's service H2016, and I'm going to put in for November and December because I don't know where the problem lies. So to investigate it, I need to pull up all of it. And you're looking and you go, okay, so 1 unit, we're good, because S5116 is that service that can only have 1 unit per day. Okay, so we keep going, we keep going, we keep going, and then we get to the end, and I have a day that there is 2 units posted. This is not allowed. So what you'd have to do is edit this bill to be 1 unit at $100. Okay, so that way, just like these other ones, that would then work. The other thing that can happen with this that has happened, which I mentioned earlier, is we may have more than one vendor providing H2016 on the same day. That can't happen. So if that did happen, you would have to figure out what the amount was in a 15-minute unit increment, bill it that way under H2015 instead of 2016. Okay? So if I don't fix this, this date, the December 3rd date, is not going to go to the state. Okay, because it's got an EU issue. So that's going to be held up. Now, the next one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, VA, we're fine. That's nothing big deal because we fixed it already. And then this last one, this is a different vendor, 13131, and they've got the federal ID issue. They've got the address issue. They've also got a taxonomy missing. That's the VT. And we also have a service match issue. So this one is really messed up. Well, first I'm going to deal with the vendor stuff. So if I get back out of here and I go into vendor, I'm going to pull up whoever 13131 is. New vendor is the name. And I look, again, address, I can tell right away. I'm missing that zip +4. Okay, so I fill that in. Then I look, and the VF error, we don't have a federal ID. That's bad. So fill that guy in. And then the taxonomy code. We haven't seen taxonomy code in here, and that is because taxonomy code is only required if the vendor has an NPI. If the vendor does not have an NPI, because maybe they're only a chore vendor or a meals vendor or whatever, they're not required to have an NPI, and therefore they're not required to have a taxonomy. If they have an NPI, they should have a taxonomy. If you don't know what the taxonomy is, or maybe you ever want to look up an NPI, there is a site out there that I've sent out in the past. If you do a search for the NPI registry in Google, or Yahoo, it's going to come up with this NPPES CMS, blah, blah, blah. If you click on that, this is a way you can search for the NPIs for either an individual provider or an organization. Most likely you're an organization, so I click on that, and then it pops up this screen that you can type in the NPI or the name of the business, or if they're got what their DBA is, their city, their state, which most of them are Michigan, so that's easy enough to fill in. But you could put in, let's see, like visiting nurses or something here. If you don't know the entire name of it, okay, it tells you up here that you can use a wildcard of an asterisk. So, but that's only available in certain fields. So if maybe I didn't know if visiting nurse, let's leave it at visiting nurse because it could be association or something, I don't know. So then I would put an asterisk. You put the zip and city if you wanted to figure that out. I don't know what I'm going to pull up, but I'm just going to go with this. You have to put in this lovely security image to search, and then you have a list of all of the various places that match your service criteria. It tells you their NPI, and then I don't know if it's to the right or you click on it. If you click on that, you'll get their information about them, and down here it shows you what their taxonomies are. So you can then use that, pick one, doesn't matter, whatever makes more sense to your agency, and then you can put that inside of our system. Okay? So that's available to you. Or if you know what it is, maybe they're a home health agency. So you could pick agencies, home health, and be done with it. That's fine. I don't think the state is cross-referencing these. I've never seen it done. But if you wanted to do it the right way, the MPI registry search is the way to go. That's also how you can find missing NPIs. But I will tell you that most of the people that we've ever searched for an NPI on here really don't have an NPI. So that's available. And so we had text on me, federal ID, and the address. I fixed all those, saved that. That one's done. Now the next issue here is service match. And if I look, T2038 and 9511, I'm actually going to go pull up the waiver contract. And it's a good question which one it is. Probably this one. Nope, not that one. Maybe it's G, or is it I or L? I can't remember. Okay, here we go. This is that document I was explaining earlier that contains all the valid codes for the contract year. Okay? So I would look now for that T2038 with, I think it was 9511. So T2038 and 9511. Whoops. If I look right here, you'll see it skips from 10 to 12. That's your first clue you got a problem. Okay? Because the white there's no background. That is the waiver codes for the fund sources 100, 101, 108, 9, 10. Okay? If you scroll down, and T2038 is here in blue with the SE. The blue is the non-waiver funded NIFTY services. That is where the 99 or 9511 is. Yep. Okay? So if you look, it says this is a CMP only code. You have to use other HCPCS codes for My Choice purchases. So that means that you have said this is a My Choice purchase, but using the fund source 100, 101, 8, 9, or 10. Okay? And you've billed it, though, to a code that's only eligible for the 996 fund source. So what you'd need to do is you would need to search through the rest of the this document to figure out what the right code is. Of course, off the top of my head, I've had this one so much that I know what it is. And it is the E0245 tub, stool, or bench. Okay? So you would go in and you would go through that process of probably doing the copy care plan so you can copy everything over, change that service code combination, take out the standard mark, and then fix it that way. Then you have to make the bill edits to the right service code, and then you'd be all in business. Okay, I'm not going to go through all that today, but that would be how you would fix that and identify what the right coding is. Okay. So then, at this point, we fixed all we can, so now we could, relax until the 271 file came back, because right now, remember, we're pretending that didn't come back. In this case, it's back, technically, that's, air quotes, because the data service was over a year old. So we've already got this back, which means I already can continue. So what the next step for you to do is to reprocess the claims. So you click the reprocess button, and it goes through, and it is going to go through and look again at all that client data and all the bill data and the vendor data and go and find out if there's anything that's changed. It's going to find out if there's any bills that have been posted and verified that are related to any of these bills, okay? And it's going to include those edits as well. However, it will not include new dates of service to the same service, okay? So if maybe I had posted, for December 2013, I had posted every other day, let's say it was odd days just for example purposes. If I post an even day bill, after I already started this process, that even day bill is not included in the first process, and the system is grouped based on client, service code, procedure code or modifier, however we want to call it, and date of service. Okay? So if that combination doesn't already exist in our processing table that this is working with right now, then those extra bills will not be grabbed. But if you had went through and went, oh, wait a minute, I shouldn't have billed this service, such as you took out that T2038 shower chair or bench standard remark because it's bad, it's going to find that there's now a negative bill for that code. Okay? But it's not going to grab the new E0245 code that you posted because that wasn't in the process already. That service was not there for that data service. But it will grab the negative. I didn't do that example, so it won't show you anything. Now, this reprocessing can take from just a couple seconds to longer, depending on how big the batch is. So I already know, since I barely have anything in here, when I click refresh, it's already going to be done, I think. Oh, wait. There it goes. Okay, I don't think it took it really the first time. But if you're doing a whole brand new month and you're a larger agency, it's probably going to take a while. I want to say maybe 20 to 30 minutes. I wouldn't think most of them take more than an hour to run, but new months will do that. If you're just sending a few, then you're probably going to have that done within minutes. Okay, it'll be done reprocessing. I do want to say too that in this system, you only should be sending one new month at a time in order. And we do say that because otherwise we're going to have too big of file batches. If we have too big of file batches and send that to the state's going to yell at us because we have too big of a batch and they blew up their system. Okay, so they can't be too large. So the largest we want you to send is one new month at a time. Because when you send a new month, it still grabs everything back to the beginning of when we started encounters. So if there were any changes or new bills posted before that date, or the end of that month, then those are dragged along as well in a new month. So you never have to go backwards and do each month separately. Like if right now I'm on December 2013, which I should have done in November, so we're just going to forget that part, but this is demo data, so there's not much there. But typically I'd be on November right now, and it would grab anything that was also in October. So I wouldn't need to do a separate October batch again to just get those edits. I could just do the November batch, and then I would have the October edits plus my new November. That's fine. Do those all at once. You do not have to go back and run one month at a time for any edits. You just pick the next month that you want to include. Okay? So that is done. So what you would do now is you're going to want to look at the participant error report again, and there's no records found. And what we really should see, which we're not, is that Daffy Duck still has a Medicaid ID error. Okay, because I didn't put it in. So, but he dropped out of the process because that's one of those key fields. Medicaid ID and Social Security number are key fields. So Daffy and He-Man, because He-Man was the other issue, they got changed. So they drop out. So their errors are not shown anymore, regardless if it was fixed or not. And then anybody else, if you fixed them, this is clean. So Strawberry Shortcake was the other person on here. We did fix all of her stuff. So she comes now, she's not on here anymore, which means Strawberry's going to be in our batch. Then if we look at the bill error report, this is also considerably cleaned up because we got rid of all the vendor federal ID, the vendor address, taxonomy. We still have the NPI because we don't have an NPI for them. We still have that less than zero because there's still a pending claim related to that. And we have a partial unit still with this because I didn't fix it. And same thing with the excessive units and the service batch. I didn't fix those. Okay? So I expected to see that result here. So I know that I still have to deal with these, but I'm not dealing with those right now. I'm just going to keep going and get this batch sent. And the next thing that's available, when the 271 comes back, if this was the real world, it would show you here. I'm actually going to pull up our training user guide at this point. I guess I should have probably done this there earlier, but Compass. No, user guide first. Okay. Compass Claims User Guide. So if I pull this guy up, and I want to go to where the CHAMPS differences is. Here we go. Okay. So this talks about the CHAMPS differences report. I will not have anything to show you on this, and I never will for a training because I can't actually get data on dummy people from the state that's anywhere near adjacent to do. So this CHAMPS differences report is available after we get the eligibility information back from the state. If it was over a year old and we got nothing because it didn't actually do it, then this report is completely worthless. However, if we do get it, that will be available. And we want to make sure that you understand that this report is available only one time, well not one time, but until when you create this batch, that report goes away and you can't get it back. So if you need to keep this report because you want to keep it on file or whatever, you're going to want to print that out because otherwise it's gone. I can't pull it up. No one can pull it up. It's gone for that batch. You could resubmit another batch that would create you another one, but it may look different because the things got fixed or whatnot in between, and it wouldn't necessarily have the same information. So if you need it, you would need to you would want to print that out. Okay, so you had a hard copy or save it to your network or something like that. But the report itself, in claims processing, it has a couple more things. I'm not going to talk about that, data differences and ineligible bills. Rejected client requests, that will show up for encounters, and that is all about people that the information of the Medicaid ID, SSN, or date of birth were not accurate, the combination of them. Something is wrong because it rejected our eligibility request. So that would be for people that the Medicaid ID, that maybe the date of births don't match, you have an invalid Medicaid ID posted, or the SSN is different than what CHAMPS has. Those would all cause rejected client requests. And then the status mismatch report is issues between our COMPASS status records and the CHAMPS records for eligibility. Okay, because when we get the eligibility request back, we not only get other insurance, but we also get our own insurance for My Choice. So, or for TCM, we get that as well from straight Medicaid. So in here it talks about what it's showing on each side, and I'm actually going to look at this blurred one. I'm hoping I can get it bigger looking for you. No, it's blurred on purpose because, again, I can't really get big data on here. But let's look at status mismatch. So it shows you the Medicaid first name, last name, Social Security number. Then this is COMPASS data. So it's showing then the start and stop date. The start and stop date is actually more reflective of the bill dates than the actual COMPASS data. So if so don't pay attention to the actual dates. This may not be the program start date, start and stop dates. It's just a conglomerate of the bills that we're sending and then what our system says for that date range. So for that date range, our system is saying that you don't have them as My Choice in this example, or in all three of these actually. So that means that you don't have them as waiver Y. But on the CHAMP side, the first one is the same. It agrees. You know, nope, they're both not My Choice. But the last two here say that they are My Choice, which means that CHAMPS has it correct, but your system is out of date and needs to be updated that they're waiver Y now. Okay, that's one example. It also flips and goes, of course, the other way, which is probably more common, that, you know, it's not My Choice in CHAMPS, but it's My Choice in COMPASS. Now, we do have a bug right now in the system, and I can't remember the exact circumstances of it, but it is showing that people are not My Choice in CHAMPS when, if you go look, it is. And it also will screw up what we have in our system in the COMPASS status. Like I said, I can't remember the exact circumstance. So our best recommendation right now until we get this fixed is that you look at anything that shows up here and find out, you know, compare your status data, compare it to the CHAMPS eligibility criteria, which I just showed you how to do that in the eligibility inquiry part, and then see if your stuff matches up. If it does, then ignore the error because then you realize it's part of that bug that we're working on fixing right now. If it's not, then you need to address that issue so that if there's maybe an eligibility issue that has not been resolved. Most likely, by the time these encounters are going, you've already dealt with eligibility issues because you knew about it when capitation payments were not coming. Okay? Because the encounter process has a lag of time. You know, you have to get the vendor bills in, you have to get those approved, and then eventually you'll get the encounters processed and batch sent. Okay? Versus the payments are coming once a month at the end of the month. So you have that right in your back pocket, and so you probably are already aware of any issues of conflicts with CHAMPS eligibility and your system because of that. Okay, so that's what status mismatch is about. Now, in the user guide here, let me bring this back down. Okay, it talks about which one doesn't hold back bills. So it says the status mismatches do not hold back any bills. It's just for your information. So we send it anyway. The rejected client requests, I think we're sending those anyway as well. Okay. In claims processing, ineligible bills and rejected client bill requests will hold the bills back from being sent unless it's over 6 months. Okay. But encounter processing will send the rejected client requests regardless. Okay. If you want to exclude them for whatever reason, which I don't think there's a need for, you must cancel the batch and correct the issue and begin the encounter process again. So it's going to send everything that shows up on this CHAMPS difference report anyway. Okay? So it doesn't matter. It's there for your information only with encounters. everything's going to go. Now, claims processing is a different circumstance, but for encounters processing, we're shipping them. We don't care. Okay? So that's that piece. So if we go back to encounters processing here, all right. So at this point, I re-reviewed the participant bill error reports, because you want to do that after the reprocess is done. And then I've also looked at the TAMPS differences report. So right now, I'm looking pretty good. And at this point, if you found and fixed more errors, you're going to want to reprocess again, because reprocessing is what is going to update the bill and participant errors. So if I didn't reprocess after fixing some bills or some client data, then it's not going to pick up those changes and it will exclude them from my batch. So anytime you're going to fix anything that was a problem, you need to reprocess again before you click the Create Batch button. Okay? So once you're satisfied with what you've got, then you can click the Create Batch. Okay? You click the Create Batch, it tells you it's creating the batch, and then you can refresh and see when it's done. Of course, this is pretty quick because I've got barely anything in it. When it's done, it goes down into this completed claims batches section. Okay? It tells you what the batch ID is, what month year you chose to run. It tells you the process begin date. This is the date that you initially clicked the process button, so this could be days old. Some of you are doing the process and then working on stuff for like a week and then are coming back and creating the batch. That's fine. It's just that process begin date is going to show the older date, not the actual date that you created the batch. And then next, you've got the batch summary, the claim summary, and verified not sent reports. Okay? You can choose if you want to print these. They are here and available to you forever. Okay? So there is really no need to print it unless maybe some people I know like to do this batch summary report because they like to keep a file, a folder to say that here's all the batches I've created so that they know and they can easily access it without having gone into Compass. But basically this thing says that it was created successfully, which month you'd picked, the total cost for that selected month, okay? That could be different, and is in this case, from the total cost of the batch, okay? Because all the edits from prior months are going to also go in the batch, but that's not for December 2013, okay? Batch ID, batch creation date, that's listed there. And then we've got the total number of claims, the total units, and the total cost. Now, you're probably looking, going, wow, I thought you said this was a test database, and yeah, I see it's less than $4 grand, but why is there 163 claims? That's because when we went into the encounters world, we decided to stop aggregating all of the claims by month, by person, by service, by procedure, by month, and instead do it by day by day by day, because it's much easier to administrate when there's certain days that are not eligible, instead of the whole darn month is partially paid, not fully paid, and they adjudicate on a data service basis at the state. Therefore, it makes more sense for us to just make every claim a different day. So when we create a claim, we're creating it and aggregating that same client, service, procedure, data service. Now, Encounters actually also adds in another key field that claims processing doesn't, and that is vendor. If there's a different vendor, that creates a different claim as well. Okay? And if we look at page, let's see, it's farther back. Or did I take it out of here? No. No, it's not nearly as thing, but it does talk about, on page 28 of the user guide, it talks about creating 837 professional claims from bills. This is more detail into the background. You do not need to know this really, but it does tell you what makes up a claim, and it's grouped by the agent, the vendor, federal ID, or SSN. So if you have two vendors in the system that share the same federal ID or SSN, maybe it's two different sites, maybe you've split them into two different parts for whatever reason that you wanted to track them separately. Okay, if that person has a service that's using both of those vendors on the same day, it's going to aggregate both those vendors and just pick which one's information it's going to send on that data service in the claim. Okay, because we're aggregating by federal ID or SSN depending on which they have. So that can happen. The vendor information may be aggregated if they share. But other than that, the claims are split by vendor. And that's because of what the Encounter's requirements is. The other thing is we only include standard remarks in a note field in the claim for certain service codes. It lists those there. It's S5165, the home mods, personal care items for S5199, and there's a few more. I'm not going to list them all. But those are the only codes that we actually send the standard remarks to the state for. Codes such as meals for the hot, frozen, and cold, okay, we don't send those standard remarks. There's some other ones like that too that we don't send standard remarks because the state doesn't want them. So those are really added for your use and not for the state's use. It also talks about replacement and void claims. Basically, if the claim has been sent and accepted before, then if you make a change to that same date of service, same vendor, blah, 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 okay, and then we need to send that, then it is considered either a replacement or void claim. If it's a positive amount in the end, then it's a replacement claim. If it's a zero amount, meaning that you took everything out for that day, then we send a void claim. So that's happening behind the scenes. You're not really seeing it except for on the reports you'll see it, but you aren't making that decision. The system is doing that for you. So the codes, it's a 1 for a claim type code for an original, it's a 7 for a replacement, and it's an 8 for a void. So those are all in the user guide on page 29. You don't have to pay attention to that too much. And I think where you would see that is on this claim summary report. If you pull this up, it's going to give you what the claim number we created was. So it starts with, first of all, it starts with your agent code. So I'm agent 99 in this demo database, but it would be, 11 or 10 or 1A, whatever. Then 837E, we put the E in there starting with Encounter so that we could tell the difference easily between an Encounter claim and a regular old claim. So there's an E for Encounter claims. And then when we first started, there was a 0 here, but now we've grown so many that we're now got a 1 here in the front. So most of your claims don't have a leading 0 in between, so, or the new ones that you're creating. So that's how we compose a CRN, and this is just a sequential number otherwise for the rest of that. Then there's the claim type code. These, in fact, are all claim type of 1. So that just means that it's the first time they've been sent, or it was rejected the first time and I'm sending it again. That would cause another original claim type code. Then we show the vendor federal ID that this has got put under, which service. There's 2 modifiers, and what this is first modifier is going to be one of 2 things. It could be a procedure code that you put in the system, so like T1000, the nursing service has TETD, they would be placed here. If it doesn't have that, like this code doesn't have that, and you posted it to a 102 or a 105 fund source, then modifier 1 will be SE, okay, because that's where we're going to automatically fill that in for you. And we have to allow for 2 modifiers because if the T1000 TE is also posted to 105, then we also need to have an SE modifier on it as well. So that's why there's 2 modifiers here, even though you can only add 1 modifier to our system. Okay, so the other one's reserved for if we have all of the above with a service procedure and a fund source of 105 or 102. Date of service sums up the number of units and total cost that it sends, and we aggregate the total for the month and then the total for the client, and then you just keep going and going. Okay, so this is the people that were sent and the claims that were sent in this batch that I just created. Okay, and then you got your grand total down below with the full amount. So again, this is available to you at any time. Most people won't print this out because it's going to be a lot of pages, but it's there for you to review, especially if you want to make sure someone made it into that batch. Then the last report that you should run after every time you create a batch is the verified not sent. And when you click that, it is going to show you that everybody that has not gone in a claims batch that has a verified bill. Okay, you'll see here we've got Daffy. Well, we know why we have Daffy, because he was missing the Medicaid ID. Okay, Superman here, he and Strawberry Shortcake were some of the people that were missing or had errors still on the bill-related report that we needed to fix. Okay, excessive unit service match, less than 0, pended claim. Okay, that's why they're there. If you see people here that you did not see on the participant-related or bill-related report, okay? Or you haven't maybe, I mean, you could have, I guess, verified them since you started the process, so you got to exclude those as well. If you've run this immediately after creating the batch, then then this should be only the people that were on the errors report. If you have more than that, then you'll need to look into it a little bit, and if you can't figure out why, meaning that maybe nobody verified any new bills, so there shouldn't have been anything added to this file, then you're probably going to want to contact CIM so that we can look into it, okay? Because everything here should have been reflected on the participant or bill-related day report. Okay. So I always recommend to run that immediately after running a batch. The other thing that you can use it for right now is that we're trying to make sure we have all the fiscal 14 claims in. So you would find your September batch, which may be not the most recent one, and click on Verified Not Sent. And that Verified Not Sent is actually not related to this batch whatsoever. It's only tied to the month and year that are selected. So it grabs all the Verified Not Sent up till and up through that batch month year. So you don't have to, it's not tied to that actual batch. So it's not just the ones not verified, not sent in that batch. It's right now, these bills are not verified or are verified and have not been sent, and they have dates of service in October 2013 or earlier. Okay? Up till a counter started, which was in October 2013, so that doesn't make sense. So it is important that you run that too to make sure that everything's good and you're not missing claims from being sent for some reason. Okay? Let me go back a second. I want to make sure I covered my highlighted stuff here. Okay. There is a section on encounters versus claims in the user guide. I'm really not going to go through that too much, but it is available to you on page 27. So we've talked about a lot of it, of different requirements and such and how that works, but some of it I may not have discussed, but I'm not going to worry about that today. User permissions for claims. We talked about how claims processing view privileges in Compass Manage users allows somebody's email to show up here, but you also would need to have add change privileges to Compass Manage users if you were going to be able to click any of these buttons. Okay, so if you need to be able to process and create the batch, etc., then you would need add change rights. If you just are a supervisor, you're not actually doing this, but want access to it, want to be able to run these reports, you can do that without having the add change. Okay, these reports are available to anybody with view privileges to claims processing. So you do not need to have, the only thing it is the add changes for is for people that need to process and actually do the work of creating batches. Okay. The encounter file that comes back. I talked earlier about how that comes back on a nightly basis. It may not come back right away, but it's usually back within a week, which is so much better than the claims processing ever was. It usually took 2 to 3 weeks, and then, you know, we had stragglers for more than 120 days. So this is much better. So what we do is we ship when you create this batch, it actually doesn't go anywhere. Okay, it actually goes into an area for us, and that we then look at it, and we'll run any checks on it that we may have decided that we need to start looking at before we send it. We may clean some stuff up. Right now I'm not. I'm just clicking send and going. But we create the file that way. So when you create the batch, that's just a holding place, and then we're checking daily. Then we choose to create the file, which creates an 837 professional claims format file, and then we ship that to CHAMPS. Then CHAMPS tells us if the file is accepted or not. If the file isn't accepted, it's usually because there's some issue, such as maybe the NPI was a bad NPI, or maybe it didn't have enough digits or something like that. Doesn't happen often. We've had some issues, you know, when we first started doing this, that we had some negative claims going for crazy reasons, that the process wasn't working quite right in replacement claim world. So I had to fix that manually and resend it. So all that stuff is happening without your knowledge. We fix it, we get everything to go, then and send it. Then they return this encounter error file to us, and that is automatically processed by the system. Our system checks to see if it's available or not, and I get a message saying it's there or not. We'll then check to see what kinds of rejections are in there. There's actually not necessarily rejections in there at all. It tells you if the file's been processed, and then if you have any information only or rejection type errors. The information only errors are called IO errors, and this is all on the bottom of page 29. And that is most of the errors in the file, and most of those are not applicable to MyChoice. It's stuff that they said, you know, yes, this flag is an issue, but it's not an issue for MyChoice. It's an issue probably for some CMHs or something else out there that does encounters, but it's not an issue for us. So these files are huge, but most of them are IO errors. And then the other type of error that we have to actually pay attention to is RE errors, and those have all been for eligibility issues that some of them CHAMPS has to fix. Some of them will probably be things that need to be billed to TIPS, but we haven't gotten that far to know what the difference is between the two. So right now, the RE errors still consist of less than 1% of all the errors received, and it's 0.26% of all encounters sent. Okay, so we're talking small potatoes of what the rejections are. I think I just checked, and we have like 600,000 in for fiscal 14 that's rejected. That's statewide. Okay, that was less than, what did I say? It was like 0.03% of the waiver or something like that. So it's really small potatoes of what's going on right now, but it is money that we want included in the capitation review, and the state is manually putting those things aside so that they can include it in the Milliman analysis. Okay. So we are handling all those errors behind the scenes. You are not, there's nothing for you to do. All you do is create batches, ship it over the wall, and then CIM's taking care of it. If in the future that we do have something, then we'll build something to deal with that, but right now there is nothing that we can't handle here. And I mean, right now we're handling it by just making it go every time and put it back in, resend it again until CHAMPS is fixed. Okay, so that's going on. Other things I wanted to talk about. Yeah, the two errors that are coming in are 20101 and 1098 errors. So if you ever hear that from the state, Elizabeth may reference it at some point. Those are the two type of eligibility rejections we're getting. Again, that's 20101 and 1098. So they have a slightly different meaning. Some are probably due to you having waiver pending clients, and they're getting rejected for eligibility for that because we're sending them regardless of eligibility, as long as we have a Medicaid ID. And then those will get put back into the cycle and keep going, as well as there's certain TIPS bills that are getting rejected that should not be because they never had Medicaid, or they never got approved for the waiver, let's say. They had Medicaid. Other things that should be happening in your agency right now is there are some scripts out there in the reports portal, and I'm just going to go there in our demo area. In the Clear Access tab under, I think this is under Services, there is two different scripts and reports. One is T22 Care Plans and one's T2022 Billing. And what these are is to make sure that you have posted all the supports coordination services that you want to post, and to make sure that, first of all, are the care plans set up? And if they are, then make sure that I actually posted all the bills to them. Okay? And I'm just going to pull up the sample files and to show you what they would look like. So in here, it shows you that these need to be entered, need to be fixed, and missing. There's different categories for everything. And then it tells you if the program is one of these things. It depends what programs you ran it for, but if the program it listed here is one of these three, then you don't need to fix anything. It's just for your information. But it starts out and it shows you certain things that are optional fix. This one happens to be a CP modifier, not U1, so that's an optional fix. U1 was used as a modifier in the very beginning in encounters because they wanted you to specify if they were SSP or not, I believe that way. And they changed their mind on that and said, nah, you don't have to use that. You can, but you don't have to. So that's why this is an optional fix. So this is saying that the care plan modifier is not used. U1, and it should be because it's an SSP type person. This one says template missing, not SSP, fix required. So the people that would show up in there, you would need to have a care plan set up if you plan to bill for supports coordination services for those people. Okay? Same thing here. This is the same thing, but it's for SSP folks. Again, this was built with the intent of the 2 different modifiers for the different people, and we just didn't worry about fixing it because it still gives you all the good information. But the fix required, again, section, so if you want to post T2022 bills to that, you're going to need to enter care plans for that, and then the rest are optional, and then you get to a section that these are all the people that are good, okay, and it gives you a total for all these of which ones are good in the thing. So anything at the bottom of the report, they're fine. So you would go through and fix what you want to fix here, and then you would run the billing report. I got to go back here. Okay. So the billing sample is going to show you all the people that have care plans for T2022, but the bills are posted correctly or they're missing. There's a few different things. There's a missing section. There's also a different cost section that this is showing. So it's saying that the care plan projected cost was $950, but you actually billed $475. And most this sample right here is probably that the template was set up goofy for that particular month, so it's doubled the amount. So that probably means that the care plan template needs to be fixed. But then it shows you all the ones that are posted correctly, so you can ignore all those. So those are reports that you want to do to make sure your supports coordination is getting posted as you want. That's available to you. The other thing that you're going to want to run periodically is, I don't think it's in here, I think it's in capitation, is the kicker bills not posted. And you know what, this may not be in here at all because I haven't updated this. It's the new release. But there's a kicker bills not posted script, which I'm going to just go here.
Hey, Melissa, I think I saw it down at the bottom of that section.
That's a different one. That's the
okay.
That's the compare kicker payment thing. But the kicker bill's not posted. It'll show you the transition agent, which would be you, the Social Security number and the name of the person and what their transition date is, to say that you have not posted any T1023, T1028, or T2038 for these people, and this is their information. So you would need to get these in, because if you don't do that, you're not going to get a kicker payment for these people. Okay? So this is something you should run regularly to make sure that the bills are posted for those as well. The other one that was out there that I did have in there was this, where did it go? Kicker, bill T codes, kicker payment compare. That's a different report made more for administration to compare the bills that were posted to the kicker payment expected to see what the difference is. This is all based on expected, not actual. So the expected amount that would be paid, not that it actually the kicker was generated. So this is just more of an admin script to know what's expected for kicker payments, and then compare it to how much bills you posted that was spent on that information. Okay. So that is all I have for today's training, unless you have other questions or things that you'd like me to revisit. No? Okay. Well, if you do have questions that come up afterwards, then you can feel free to email HelpStar, and we can get back to you on that. But otherwise, I hope you do well with this. I know most of you are already caught up with all of the fiscal 14 stuff, which is great. So then we have a complete data set for Milliman to look at, and then we have to worry about your fiscal 16 rates. Hopefully will look good. So I'm glad that everybody got together and finished that all. So good job. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can let us know, and we will be in touch. So we will talk to you later. Thanks for participating in today's training.
Thank you.